Hi, I'm Becky Streepy from Glue and Glitter, and today we are going to make my super easy, super delicious veggie potato cakes. These cakes are easy to make, they only take a few ingredients, and you are going to love them. Before we get to the recipe, I do want to talk a little bit about binders. Anytime you're baking, you're probably going to need some kind of a binder. That is the difference between a muffin that holds together and a muffin that just crumbles apart in your hands. And traditionally, egg is the binder that people use when they're baking. Of course, for a vegan recipe, you're not going to use egg. And this recipe actually uses 3 different ingredients as the binder. The first binder you're using is the mashed potatoes themselves. Potatoes contain a starch. You can actually buy potato starch at the store, but it also is, inside a potato. You probably could have guessed that. And potato starch helps bind things together. It soaks up moisture and it gets kind of gummy when it's soaking up that moisture, and it keeps things in place. The second binder that you're using in this recipe is flax meal. Usually when you make a flax egg, you would whisk the ground flax seeds with water and set them aside to thicken. In this recipe, because it's going into this batter that's pretty moist and you're going to be mixing it for quite some time, you don't even have to worry about making the flax egg and then adding it. We're just adding the flax meal straight to the batter. The other thing about the flax is that you want to make sure you're using flax meal, which is ground flax seeds. If you use whole flax seeds in this recipe, they will not work. Flax seeds, the coating on them is very hardy, and so if they aren't ground up, they're not going to do any of the binding goodness that flax meal does, so make sure that you're using flax meal or ground flax seeds. The last binder that we're using is chickpea flour. It also helps hold everything together. You can find chickpea flour at pretty much any grocery store. It sometimes is also called garbanzo bean flour, so if you find garbanzo bean flour, just know that it's the same thing. If you really can't find it in a grocery store by you can order it online, but chances are if your store has even a small selection of like Bob's Red Mill or Arrowhead Mills kind of stuff, you'll find the chickpea flour there. So take a look before you assume that you won't be able to find it. Now that we've talked about all the binders, it's time to make these potato cakes. The first thing that you're going to do is cook your potatoes. Cube up some Yukon Gold potato. There's no need to peel them. Yukon Golds have a nice thin skin, so it incorporates really well into this recipe, which has a lot of texture anyway. You can cook those potatoes up either on the stovetop or in the Instant Pot. On the stove, you'll just put them in a pot with enough water to cover, and bring it to a boil and simmer it for about 15 to 20 minutes until the potatoes are fork tender. If you want to cook your potatoes in the Instant Pot, which is my preferred method, just put the potatoes into your pot with a half cup of water, seal the lid and cook it at high pressure for 5 minutes, and then do a 10-minute natural release. Once the potatoes are done cooking, you can just strain them and set them aside. While they're cooking, you're going to get the rest of the potato cake ingredients together so that you're ready to put it all together at the end. Let's prep some veggies, y'all. To prepare the veggies for these potato cakes, heat some olive oil in a frying pan on medium-high heat and add some minced broccoli, shredded carrots, minced onion, minced garlic, and a little bit of salt. And you're just gonna cook those for a few minutes, stirring to keep things from sticking until everything starts to soften. The broccoli will turn bright green, the onions will turn translucent, and when you see that happening, it's time to turn off the heat and transfer those veggies right to your mixing bowl. This is the bowl where you're going to make the dough, so it's also the bowl where you're going to add all of the rest of the ingredients. So dump those potatoes that you made into the bowl. They should be ready by now. And then add the chickpea flour, the yellow mustard, the flax meal and the nutritional yeast, and onion powder. You're welcome to experiment with what you use to spice up this recipe. Sometimes it's fun to add something like Italian seasoning or fresh basil. Have fun with it and kind of see what you're craving and look in your spice pantry. Now that everything's in the bowl, it's time to mix and mash. So you're basically mashing the potatoes while you're mixing the dough together, and make sure you do a really good job mashing up those potatoes. Some chunks are okay, but you don't want like big pieces of potato because, like I said earlier, the potatoes do help with the binding. So getting them well mashed is an important part of making this dough as cohesive as it needs to be. After a few minutes of mixing and mashing, you will have a thick, sticky dough, and it's time to scoop it into lined muffin tins. So just scoop up a little bit of the dough, 3 to 4 tablespoons will do the trick, and then transfer it into one portion of a muffin pan and then press the dough down into the tin. And repeat that process with the rest of the dough. Once you've filled up your muffin pan, you're ready to bake. Bake your potato cakes for 25 minutes and then pull the pan out of the oven and let them cool in the pan for 10 minutes more. This cooling time is really important because they will be firm when they come out of the oven, but they will still be soft on the inside. And if you try to pull off the cupcake liner while they're still too warm, you're gonna lose a lot of the goods. It's gonna just stick to the liner. You'll have a much easier time pulling the paper off if you let them cool for about 10 minutes. Once the cooling time is up, you're ready to serve. I like to serve these sprinkled with green onions on top, but you could really serve them with anything that you would put on top of baked potatoes or mashed potatoes. So you could do something like sour cream, you could do gravy. One thing that my kid and I really like to do is make a mixture that's half yellow mustard and half vegan mayo, whisk that together, and that is a great dip for these potato cakes. I definitely recommend it. I hope that this video has answered all of your questions about this recipe. If you have questions that I did not get to in this video, feel free to drop them below. I'm happy to help. And don't forget to rate and subscribe. Happy cooking!